Should an NPC have a name? As usual, if you've watched videos from our channel before, you know my opinion on that. I like giving almost every NPC a name that my players interact with because it makes it more believable. And if they start referring to people as just, oh yeah, the one guy we met at that place, that time, there's not a lot of connection to that NPC, right? But if you give them a name and they remember the name, that's a bit different. So why are NPCs important? Why should we care about giving an NPC a name or a semblance of a backstory or their own motivations? Well, the answer is really simple. Because you're creating a character that your players' characters are interacting with, and those player characters have their own motivations and desires and, thought processes and, drives. When they run into another person that they feel is not a cardboard like stand-in for a game mechanic, it changes the way that they start interacting with them. So if you give, say the bartender a name, more than likely they'll treat them more like a person as opposed to just the NPC that gets us drinks that we don't give a shit about. So really, creating NPC names can be an important part of world building. Now, we talked about this a bit in our last episode, the idea of crafting a believable, breathable world that interacts and responds to your player's character. That's what NPCs are there for. They're the medium through which, most of the time, the player's characters will interact with the world around them. They're the medium through which they get favors done. They're the medium through which they buy goods and services. They're the medium through which they usually achieve success by beating up bad guy NPCs or thwarting evil plans of NPCs. They're really that instrument that you have at your disposal as a storyteller to move the narrative along. Now, this doesn't mean that all NPCs have to be vital to the plot. As a matter of fact, most of them aren't going to be. The people they meet in town, the people they walk by, the innkeep who rents them a room for the night. These may not be NPCs that are important to the story as a whole, but in the moment, they're important because they're the one point of interaction with the player, between the players and the world around. What this means is, if you give them a small bit of personality, maybe just a small descriptor, an adjective or two that describes, kind of who they are and what they do, you can start to give a semblance of flavor to an NPC. You can start to give some idea that they have their own personality, that they're not just there to say, yes, sir, no, sir, the price is X, Y, and Z, sir. They're there for their own reasons. They have their own drives. And that can create NPCs that players are willing to interact with. And you'll be surprised sometimes that, or maybe you won't, that players come back to places they had visited before, and if the same NPC is working there, sometimes it's a shock. Sometimes like, oh, hey, how's it going? If they had good relations, or, oh, it's that guy again. Fuck, I hate this place. Either way, it gets them more interactive with the world around them because they're reacting to NPCs that they already know. It creates a sense of continuity with existence in the world. If they're running into the same NPC that runs the shop, or maybe they come back years later and that NPC who runs the blacksmith shop is dead and his son or his daughter has taken over, it creates this idea that the world's evolving around them, that it's moving around them, that actually things matter. Things happen outside of what they do that can affect NPCs that they know and that they may like. So it can create this sense of a lived-in world. Now, a lot of times, players latch on to the weirdest NPCs. I've had players who met a child playing in a park in Barovia, and D&D, in the Ravenloft. The child was playing in a park with a doll, and for some reason that child became a big part of is the kid still there? I'm like, yeah, the kid's playing with a doll. I didn't know what was going on. And then it became this issue, why is a child in the park by itself playing with a doll? That's kind of creepy. I'm like, who said it was the parents are just right over there, and no, something's weird with that child. And they'll latch on. We know this. Players latch on to the weirdest things and create the weirdest conspiracy theories in their mind about the game you're running, which can be fun to play with. So, not to necessarily drive them nuts by egging it on, give the NPCs a name. It's Tommy. Tommy plays in the park because his dad works a lot, and it's the only time he gets to see his dad is when his dad watches him play in the park. So he wants to go to the park a lot. And that may have them go, well, why is his dad working a lot? What does he do? And you're like, he works at the mill. And conditions are really bad. And so then you start seeing these things where players will take you off-roading through your own storyline. You're like, I had no idea because I didn't plan this, and this is just a one-time NPC that they're supposed to interact with, say hi, and leave. And now they're onto this entire trek into the no man's land of my storyline that I don't know what's even going on. The fun part is if you make those The fun part is if you make those storyteller characters believable that they're interacting with, you can use them to actually loop them back into the main story. You can have something go down at the mill with Timmy's dad if they go to Tommy's dad. Was it Tommy? It's Tommy. Tommy's dad, they go investigate, and he's like, oh yeah, I would be there. I mean, yes, things are bad here, but my cousin lives in this, town in Barovia, and this really bad thing's going on over there. So I'm picking up extra shifts so I can help out their family. So now you slowly start to loop them back in, and you're still creating this idea of the world's, interactive, and NPCs are able to be worked with. And if you make those NPCs believable, you can definitely loop them back into your storyline. And then have impacts happen later on to those NPCs, and when they come back through that same town, maybe Tommy's not in the park so much. Him and his dad are hanging out now because his dad has more time because they did something to help them out. Not only does this make this idea that player actions are important, but it also creates this give and take between them and the world. And NPCs are the medium through which you do that, which is why they're super important, which is why creating good NPCs really helps your story in many different ways. What I do for NPCs, this may not work for everybody, is I usually have a list of names. Usually off to the side. I don't always use it, but I do have one. I have a massive list of names from all kinds of different, cultures and things of that nature to kind of fit in whenever I need them. Most often I'll think of them on the fly, but if I'm having trouble for an NPC, I'll go to my list and defer. You can also do this and make a list of like personality traits. Let's pick one out of the list which seems appropriate for the situation that's really going to be kind of cool in the situation the characters find themselves or the environment that they're dealing with. We'll do like a lazy barkeep, the typical, or we'll pick one that's energetic, which can be a complete difference. So you can also use it to color the differences between the same types of places they go to in different towns. So if one bartender they go to in a town is super lazy and doesn't want to do anything, his wait staff is covering for him all the time, maybe, Johnson at the bar down the street is really energetic and really interacts with the players a lot. Maybe sometimes with the point of asking too many questions that they don't want to give answers to. So they start to get a different feel for the areas and towns or different towns themselves entirely that they go to. It makes things feel different. It makes it feel like not every, inn that they go to, not every bar they go to, not every blacksmith shop or firearms store they go to is just the same carbon copy store. By giving the NPCs different names and different personalities, even just minute little like one word things where maybe one person's really gruff, the other one's a little more, wordy, you can start creating a difference of where players go. This guy has a better selection or better prices, but I really like that other guy down the street. He's got a cooler shop and he's a nicer guy. You'll see them start to actually create this relationship between their characters and NPCs that you make, even if it's a minor NPC. And later on, when you decide to do things, or maybe you're switching up, you're wrapping up a story and you're like, I don't know what to do for the next one. You go through the list of NPCs that your players really liked. Oh, they really liked Lars, who ran this like seedy bar on the bad side of town. Let's have something happen to Lars. Let's create something to where maybe one of Lars's employees, or maybe they go there, he's not there, and the new bartender lets them know, yeah, Lars, he got done dirty. Something really bad went down last week. He's in the hospital right now. And that can really prompt players to go, wait, what? We really like this guy. What the fuck happened? And they can go look into it, and that's a story hook that we discussed in previous videos that you can use to propel a new story forward, which is why even doing the smallest bit of work on your NPCs, the smallest bit of personality, be it just a name and like a one-word description or a single sentence of how a person interacts, it can really help you later on down the line lay the foundation for additional stories and create a world that the players can come to care about. Their characters may come to, really actually get involved in knowing and getting to know some of the NPCs that you have out there, so that when things happen to those NPCs, they can act as minor story hooks or plot threads to lead them back to the main story or to lead them on a new adventure entirely. And that is why I think you should give NPCs a name. Anyway, if you like the video, feel free to hit the like button. As always, subscribe if you want updates about when we go live with new videos. We're going to be doing some new stuff. I think we're going to move on a bit from NPC and world building and get into more like table, consequences and interactions. But it'll be fun. We've got some new stuff that's coming out this good. Should be a good time. Anyways, as always, have fun.